97.3 ESPN, Josh Hennig back here in the studios. We work out a couple things here. Mike and Pete are down at 2 Mile Landing over in Wild Request for 99 Bottles Party on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get back with the guys in just a moment. All right, well, we'll work on that in a second. We'll bring up KC Joyner here on 97.3 ESPN. And Casey, the guys were asking you about what you saw on the film from Isaac Seumalo in the game on Sunday.
I saw some inconsistent play, but as we mentioned in our spot earlier this week, the Eagles, for the course of the season, they've got a 41% rate in the metric I have called good blocking rate. Good blocking rate measures how often an offensive line gets its ball carriers good run blocking. It's important because ball carriers are 4 to 5 times more productive when they get good run blocking. 41% is a good number. 44% led the league last season, so it's not that far off the pace. And the Eagles had a 50% rate against the Chiefs. So even though he struggled, the offensive line as a whole, as far as the running game goes, the Eagles have the blocking to be able to lean more on the running game if they choose to go in that direction.
You mentioned earlier in the week when you were on with Mike and Pete, Casey, about the fact that you have a situation where the Eagles can run, and you measured it out about the fact of they're gaining a lot of yards. Is it something where if they did run the ball more, maybe 20, 25 times, how do you think that would impact the offense?
Well, actually, they're getting good blocking. They're not getting many yards, and that may be why Peterson's deciding not to lean on the running game more often. He says it's because of situationally speaking, they're loading the box and things. Yeah, that's reasons that you don't run the football. Teams run against loaded boxes all the time. It's not like if you never ran against the loaded box, they'd never hand the ball off to Ezekiel Elliott or Todd Gurley or anybody because they get loaded boxes all the time. So what's happening is they're getting 5.6 yards per carry when they get good blocking. That's a really bad number. 8.5 is usually about the league median. 10 is a really good number, and you don't want to be anywhere really below 8 even to be solid in that category. So they're not getting the production there. But I think part of it is they're handing the ball off. They're getting good blocking, but they're not getting many yards, and they're going, this isn't working very well. Okay, let's just go ahead and throw the football. You have to be patient with the running game. You have to stick with it even when you're only getting 5.6 yards per carry because, fine, you get 5.6 yards in your first 5, 6, 7 carries when you get good blocking. You keep wearing the defense down. Then you hit them in the fourth quarter. That's when you start breaking off some 20-yard gains, 30-yard gains that spikes that number. So you've got to stick with it. So I think the Eagles, just from their perspective and from taking some of the pressure off of Wentz in the passing game, I think they just need to say, look, we've got 3 running backs. Let's start using them more.
I'm talking with KC Joyner. We're back here, Mike and Pete. We vanished for a minute, but we're back, KC. And I guess Josh asked you about Seumalo getting pulled there and how poorly he was playing. But what do you know about Warmack? Top 10 pick. Tennessee didn't want him to come back. Now, to set the scene for this a little bit, he played for Stoutland in Alabama. He was a left guard there. He played a lot of right guard at Tennessee, in fact, exclusively there. So, do you think being a left guard will help him out, and is this an upgrade for the Eagles going with Warmack over Seumalo?
I think it will. I remember grading him some when he was at Alabama, and he was like a lot of the Alabama players. You saw a lot of talent from them, and they were really good players, but they would be inconsistent. You wouldn't see, if you graded them out in a run blocking perspective, they're not guys who are going to be getting good blocking in 90% of the time. It might be 80, 85% of the time. So I think it might be a situation, this may be helpful to the Eagles, because we were just talking a second ago about the Eagles don't get many yards and they get good blocking. It may be a situation of, okay, maybe he's not as consistent in the running game, or maybe he is as consistent, but maybe he starts giving you bigger holes than you're getting currently, that you're getting good blocking, but it's smaller holes. Now maybe we're getting larger lanes for these backs to run through. So it might spike the number up. So, yeah, I like it from that perspective because he is a road grader type, and I think that could really help.
Overall, when you look at the Eagles' offensive line, a lot of people would say, look, they're struggling. Carson Wentz has been hit, 20 times this year? As a unit, when you watch them, is it that they're struggling? Why is he taking so many hits?
Well, I've got an article out in ESPN's Insider section that grades the blocking matchups for every game for Week 3. It doesn't from a fantasy perspective, but that same mentality can be applied to just in general reviews of the NFL. The Eagles' offensive line, they're blocking well. It's not just the offensive linemen, it's how the tight ends and how fullbacks and things, it takes into account everybody. Their blocking wall rates out as a B- right now. So they're a little above average. I mean, obviously C's average, they're a little above average, but they're not. I think their talent level. When I had them come into the season, I thought they were a top 5 defense, or if you skewed the numbers a particular way, it might even be as good of a top 3 blocking wall. But I think right now they're more like 12 and 13. So they've got more talent than this. But I'm seeing this a lot in the league. Offensive lines don't play a lot during the preseason, so they don't gel like they used to. And if you're returning or bringing in new starters and things, you've got to get people up to speed. So I have a feeling that they're going to start blocking better as the season progresses.
Yeah, I think a lot of people looked at this line, yourself included, Casey, if memory serves. You know, Peters, Kelsey, Brooks, and obviously Lane Johnson. Sayamala was the new one with Alan Barber. They traded him away, and a lot of people here have said, look, the Eagles' best left guard, they traded. I mean, or they let him go. Barber is in Denver right now. But many people thought that they just handed that job to Sayamala, that he didn't really earn it, that Wisniewski and Warmack might be better options than Sayamala. So this should be an upgrade for them as a unit.
Yeah, I think it's an argument also for offensive lines, for teams to play their offensive lines more in the preseason. I understand why they don't want to keep starters out there because you're going to risk injury and things, but I would prefer to have found out that he's not your guy, I don't know, week 3 of the preseason rather than week 3 of the regular season. It might be a better situation for you there to say, hey, you know, however you're blocking in camp, however you're blocking against other people, you want to see how they're blocking in a game against, you know, with live competition. So, and the thing is, I know that offenses, you know, a lot of times they don't want to see change in the offensive line. Teams returned about 80% of the offensive linemen from the previous season this year, and some teams had as many as 5 starters returning, so you don't want to see anybody out there, but you really got to get your people out there earlier than you do, because that's part of the reason, like I said, I think the Eagles are struggling, is they're finding these things out in the regular season rather than finding them out before the season.
KC Joyner with us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. KC, what about the Giants' offensive line? Are they as bad as they appeared to be so far?
Actually, it's funny. If you take everything into account, their offensive line right now grades that as a B, and that's not to say that they don't have their struggles, because they got plenty of areas where they're not doing well, but they're grading out as a B. The thing for them, though, is the Eagles' front 7 in this game, I've got them graded out as being a B+, which if you add the two together and you take the relative strengths of those, this is one of the worst matchups of the week for an offensive line. I think the Giants are going to be overmatched here. I think they've actually done better than people think because they haven't had the type of competition that they're going to get this Sunday. And the Eagles, when you start looking at their metrics, they've got a lot of places where they're faring quite well.
Yeah, how big of a mismatch, that's what I was going to ask, is how big a mismatch that is with the Eagles' defensive line and how much you think the Eagles can exploit that.
Yeah, it's one of the when I grade the matchups, it's on an A to F scale versus how things grade out and such. And that matchup there, the Giants, even though it doesn't sound like much a B versus a B+, when you know, because those are representation of numbers and metrics that do behind the scenes. When you start grading how those numbers weigh out, that's a D matchup for the Giants. It's one of the worst matchups of the week. It's a below-average matchup for them. So as bad as Eli Manning's been playing when he gets pressure, and he has been getting a lot of pressure of late, as bad as he's been playing when he gets pressure, I have a feeling he's going to get even more pressure this week.
Let's stay there then. You brought up something interesting because Eli was called out this week by McAdoo. Is he not playing well? I mean, is McAdoo accurate when he calls out the quarterback? Maybe he shouldn't do it, but is he accurate?
Yeah, Eli's not playing well when he gets pressure, but if I'm Eli, I'm saying, yeah, I'm not getting anything from the running game. Paul Perkins is doing a terrible job when he gets good blocking. Just abysmal. They've got to put Darkwa in there. He's doing a horrible job. He doesn't have his top receiver, and they are still doing, you know, if I'm looking at the numbers and things, there are places where the Giants are allowing too much pressure, and he's not doing well when he gets pressure. That's the thing, too. Some quarterbacks, like Tom Brady this past week, he got pressure on 8 out of his 10 vertical pass attempts. And those passes, and his vertical pass attempts, when he got pressure, he still was 6 of 8 for, I think it was 145 yards and 2 touchdowns. So you can do well if there's pass rush pressure. Eli is not doing it. And I think Eli thinks his line isn't blocking as well for him, and I think he's kind of feeling the jitters. And I think that's what the coach is trying to say. Look, we can't give you perfect protection all the time. When it's not there, you still have to be able to make plays.
Hey, the Giants haven't scored 20 or more points in 7 consecutive games, 8 when you throw the playoff game out there. What is it the offensive line that is essentially crippling this team? They got good weapons. I mean, you got obviously Beckham. You added Marshall, who had the dropsies last week, but Ingram, I like him at tight end. How is this team not putting points on the board?
Yeah, I think it does. It starts with the running game. And they thought Perkins, because remember in the preseason they're talking about Perkins is going to be our guy. He's going to be, if he wasn't going to be their bell cow, he's going to be the next best thing. He's going to be a guy that might get 275, 300 touches too. And he has a history, by the way. If you look at UCLA, he's the most prolific pass-catching back in UCLA history. He's done that sort of thing before. He's carried that kind of workload. So I think they thought he's going to be our guy. He's going to do better. And he's done terribly. And Dark was not doing that much better, but Vereen's probably their best running back right now, and he's their pass catcher. He'd be the guy you want in the backfield all the time, and that's not a good sign. So I think that's a big part of it. The line has been inconsistent. Eli's also been inaccurate. He does not handle pressure well. And again, then you start adding in drops from Marshall, and Ingram's played well, but how much can you throw to him? They're not the tight end centric offense. And then you've got Beckham being injured. You just start checking off all these boxes like, wow, there's a lot of issues here. So I think if they even just correct 2 or 3 of these issues, or we get improvement there, I think it'll make a big difference for them.
So, Casey, let me throw some numbers at you. The Giants have scored 8 touchdowns, and they've gone 3 and out 40 times on 84 offensive drives. Is the Eagles' secondary, though, just what the doctor ordered for the Giants, or does the Eagles' defensive line negate that?
I think the Eagles' secondary is what the doctor ordered, but you got to be able to throw the football. So I think it's going to be a race. It's going to be Eli getting back to 7 steps and hoping he can get the ball downfield before the pass rush gets to him, and he can do that often enough. And again, if you're the Eagles, the way Eli's been playing, if I'm the Eagles, I'm thinking, look, we got to get sacks. You want to put the guy on the ground, that's for sure. But all I got to do is get pressure in his face. He's not the most accurate quarterback, even when you don't pressure him. All we have to do is get pressure. So I want my lineman to think, get your, push your lineman back. You want to beat your lineman, but crowd that pocket. Just make sure Eli does not have a clean pocket. You don't necessarily have to get a sack. Just give him a crowded pocket, and if you do that, it's going to really limit what he can do. So I think that gives the Eagles a big advantage.
KC Joyner is with us here. The Eagles secondary was much maligned coming into the season, right? I mean, they got Darby, then he goes down. Then last week they lose another guy in Jalen Watkins, and he's not even really, they've been using him at safety. Then they put Rasul Douglas out there, and Douglas ends up grading out as the best player on the Eagles last week. So how much of a surprise has the Eagles secondary been? Have they held up better than maybe people thought?
They have. I think that the Eagles took something of an approach. Al Davis used to say that you can never have too many good cornerbacks. Like, it was something that if he had 3 good cornerbacks, he wanted 4. If he had 4, he wanted 5. He just knew from his history that, hey, teams are going to be throwing deep. You can really only stop the vertical pass with their pass rush so often. You got to people who can cover, and your cornerbacks, they're not the biggest guys. They tend to get hurt, so you have to have a lot of them. I think the Eagles said, we want to stockpile. We want guys who, even if we've got safeties, we want to be able to move them to be able to play in the slot. We want to have guys who could do a variety of things, and I think them paying that much attention to it just gave them more depth than what they had in past years. And again, I don't think they've struggled in the past where they've been out of position and things, and they really have been better about that this year. They're not out of position the way they used to be. So it's one of those situations where I think it's a combination of factors that has helped them out. But again, the front 7 is one of the reasons that I think that it's going to be a big plus for them this week.
Casey, 74% of the Eagles' offensive snaps this year have been designed pass plays. We talk about the lack of run, but Doug Peterson, his record when they run the ball is significantly better. Is there a reason, when you look at the Eagles, is there a reason that this team, are they not, in your opinion, built to run the ball? I mean, do they not have the personnel in this game against the Giants? Is the best way to attack them run the ball, or is this another week where you think throwing the ball makes more sense for Philly?
I think it's going to be a combination because I look at the Giants' defense. The Giants' defense right now is allowing good blocking on 31% of the carries against them. That's a really good number. Again, 39 to 40% tends to be the league average. 45 is best. Usually over the course of a full 16-game season, about 30 is the worst. 30 is the best, 45 is the worst. We're looking at it from a defensive perspective. So the Giants are playing very well. The problem for them is when you get good blocking against them, they're allowing 10.5 yards per carry. So we talked earlier about the Eagles are getting good blocking, but they're not breaking off big gains. In this game, they might not get as many good blocks on a percentage basis as they had the first couple weeks of the season, but this is the type of defense that you can probably break off some big gains against. But again, you've got to kind of stick with it. So I think it's going to be one of those situations where Peterson needs to look for situations where I can get the big gainer, or I can get some backs out there, maybe in some favorable front 7 matchups and get something going there. But he's got to stick with that, because if you're getting a 10.5 yards per good blocking carry, that's a metric that if you're an offense, you've got to go after.
So in this game, where's the matchup you're watching? Where's the advantage one team has over the other that you think is the big one to watch this week?
I still think that the Eagles aren't going to be able to pass the football unless they can run the football. So I really want to see Doug Peterson say, I'm going to run the football, not stick with it stupidly. Like, if it's not working, if you get 1 yard on first down, you don't need to be running another dive play on 2nd and 9. You need to be throwing the football. But to stick with it and say, I'm not going to have a situation where unless it's 2-minute offense or something of that nature, I'm not getting a situation where I'm just going to go throw 3 passes and then punt. You've got to make sure you're letting that defense know, because the Giants' defense is very good, but you can beat them in certain ways, but you've got to make sure that you're getting after them. Plus, I got to see if Jenkins plays too, because if he plays, that makes a big difference for the defense, but if he doesn't, that opens up a lot of passing lanes.
Yeah, what about the Goodson being out for the Giants? Is that a factor in this game? The Eagles don't run the ball anyway, so what's the difference, right?
Yeah, it should be a factor. Let's put it that way. It should be a factor that he's out and things. But yeah, the injury there. If Jenkins, if he's limited, that would be a big plus, and Goodson being out could be a big plus there. But again, I sometimes think the Eagles just paint themselves into a corner and say, we've got certain things we want in an offense, or again, letting the defense dictate what you're supposed to do. Again, if they put 8 in the box, sometimes you need to run the football to say, we don't care if you put 8 in the box. We're still going to run the football. We're not going to let you tell us when we want to run the football. We'll figure out ways to do that. They've got the talent to do it. And again, you can break out big gains against this team. And when you can break out big gains, that usually means the safety's not making the plays. And if I'm the Eagles, I want to run and make that safety come out and try and make those plays. And if he does that, then I want to go over the top.
KC Joyner, ESPN.com, NFL Insider here, breaking down the matchups to watch. We'll do a couple quick hits on the NFC East here. Dallas, give us a quick take on that Dallas matchup here, because they've got an interesting one against Arizona. Arizona, I don't know what's happened to this team. Did they just get old or something? I don't know what happened to them, but that's the Monday nighter. Dallas got to go on the road. They didn't look good running the ball last week.
No, they actually they had an 18.2% good blocking rate. It's the worst good blocking rate they've had in the past 2 seasons. In fact, prior to that game, they'd only had 1 game below 30% in good blocking rate over the past 2 seasons. So it's the worst run blocking they've had in a long time. And I think it's one of the reasons that Zeke decided, hey, I'm not going to try very hard because I'm not getting good blocking anyway. The Cardinals, by the way, do very well in the run, so I don't think that this is necessarily a game. In fact, Arizona's got a 27% good blocking rate allowed, one of the best numbers in the league. I don't think this is a game where Dallas is going to get their offensive line turned around. I've got the Cardinals winning that one.
Casey, Oakland's at Washington this week. Which Redskins team are we going to see? The one that the Eagles beat handily, or the one that managed to beat the Rams? And then you've got Oakland, who just seems to have the vertical attack going, plus Marshawn Lynch running the football. All cylinders clicking so far for the Raiders.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a shootout game. The Raiders give up for good blocking 51% of their carries. It's way too much. So I think Washington's going to want to run the football more, because I think they found, hey, our vertical game when Deshaun Jackson's in Tampa, boy, it's not nearly as good, which is like, yeah, guess what? Terrell Pryor's, he's not Deshaun Jackson yet. He might get there eventually, but he's not there now. So I think Oakland's going to have more firepower and win that game.
KC Joyner with us here. All right, Eagles and the New York Giants. You can hear the game right here, 97.3 ESPN. Countdown to kickoff coverage begins at 10 a.m. The kickoff starts at 1 with Merrill and Mike. Casey, who do you like in the matchup? Eagles have won 3 straight, by the way, against the G-Men.
So far, I've gotten both my Eagles picks right this year. I picked them to win week 1 and lose week 2. So hopefully for their sake, I'm right again, because I really think this is a matchup that favors them. I think the Giants are struggling so much on offense. I think the Eagles will try and run the football more. I think they realize we can't just give up on this. And I think the Giants have too many places where they just have some problems. I can't see the Giants keep putting up a big offensive game, and I can see the Eagles doing that. So I've got the Eagles winning this one. Not handily, but probably by a touchdown.
All right, keep an eye on that. Eagles have won 3 consecutive home games against the Giants and 3 consecutive division games Carson Wentz has won, so he's starting to play better in the division as well. Casey, we will recap the game on Monday, and we hope everything is well down there in Florida.
Hey, appreciate it, guys.